good to have you coming down the road with us. It looks like this cold snap has finally broken. When I got up this morning, it was 2 above. Imagine that for all those people that are viewing us right now. 2 above seemed warm. Well, it did. We got a lot of different folks coming on today. Dr. Richard Den is going to join us. We're going to talk about the Keystone XL pipeline. Also, we're going to talk about the power grid. Marshall Albright is going to join us. He's with Cass County Electric Cooperative. And we're going to get a chance to just visit about how we power our homes. But we're going to begin with Molly Howell. Now, Molly works for the North Dakota Health Department, and she is the North Dakota Immunization Program Manager. She's been on with us before, and it's good to have her on again. Molly, thanks for coming down the road with us.
Thanks for having me.
So, obviously, everybody wants what you have. They want to be immunized. How are we doing? How is it going? I know this has been left in the state's hands, and there's different philosophies now with the new administration, but how are we doing in North Dakota?
I think so far we're doing pretty well. Over 166,000 doses have been administered in North Dakota, and over 14% of our population has received at least one dose. And North Dakota still is usually within the top 3 in terms of the percent of doses administered out of those received. And so providers are rapidly administering vaccine as soon as they receive it.
So, Molly, who sets up the pecking order? That's a question I get asked a lot from people who want to know on this show, from people who want to know on my radio show. How do we set up the pecking order of who gets it and who doesn't?
North Dakota, a couple months ago, set up an ethics committee, and this was something that we had learned from the 2009 H1N1 pandemic, is that we really needed, instead of just one person making decisions about priority groups, we needed some other input, external input, and so we have a 5-member ethics committee that met weekly. These were open, public meetings that anyone could attend, and that's where they discussed prioritization of COVID-19 vaccine, and they really based their decisions on science, so looking at data as to who was dying due to COVID, who was most likely to be hospitalized due to COVID, and then also took into consideration ethical principles, and that's how North Dakota came up with its priority groups.
Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, I can get that. The only question I had, though, in relation to that, Molly, is I've been a rural firefighter. I've been a firefighter in a rural district, and you sent the shots out to them, obviously in the name of the first responder. But why not teachers? When it comes to one of the main things that we're missing out on in some places are butts in the seats and faces in the classrooms. How much did that factor weigh in when the debate was had in the committee about whether or not we should be doing this with teachers?
Yeah, I mean, teachers were definitely discussed, and we understand the risk of exposure and the critical role teachers play in ensuring kids can continue to be in school, which allows other parents to continue to work. And so that's why teachers and childcare workers were included in Phase 1B. The rest of Phase 1B really focuses on people that are most likely to die or be hospitalized due to COVID. And so the original groups in Phase 1B focus on preventing those that are going to get severe disease, and then teachers and childcare workers additionally in Phase 1B to keep that infrastructure in childcare in schools.
That's good to hear, because I think that for our future, for our economy, and for many reasons, we need those teachers in the classroom. And so if we can have kids in that classroom for, 5 days a week, I think that's obviously a lot better. People always ask what their role in this is. In my particular corner of the earth, people are getting notices from Sanford and saying, okay, be ready. Is there a place, because people ask, is there a place that they should be signing up?
It really varies by individual healthcare provider, whether or not they have waiting lists. And so we encourage everyone to go to the Department of Health website. We have a COVID vaccine locator on our website, and you can look up your county and see each provider that enrolled to give COVID vaccine and whether or not they have a waiting list. And so you may right now be able to sign up for a waiting list in some areas. In other areas, you may not. I think what people can do right now is if you know someone 65 or older who doesn't have the internet or is struggling to find vaccine, I think now is the time to really help our 65 and older friends get registered for vaccination and signed up for vaccination, in addition to just monitoring local media to figure out when it's your turn for vaccination.
Molly, I know some individuals who stopped by where the vaccinations are happening, and they went up, they left a business card, and they said, look, I can come at a moment's notice if at the end of the day you have extra and you don't have people. That's happened. I know individuals that have been vaccinated where they got a phone call and it's like, get here. I've got more and I don't want it to go to waste, kind of a thing. What happens with the second one on those individuals? Because I'm not saying they jumped in line. That's not the point I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make is it wasn't wasted. They took the initiative to get that first vaccine, but are they, because they're not on the list, in line for that second vaccine?
We have told healthcare providers to prioritize second doses. And so we want to make sure that everyone who received a first dose will also receive a second dose, because that's what's needed to get to that 94, 95% efficacy. And so those individuals should receive second doses according to their schedule, whether that's 3 or 4 weeks after the first dose.
So even though that they were vaccinated earlier, they'll still be on that list to get the second dose, even whether or not, even though they might not be in that high-risk group.
Yes, that's correct. And we really have told healthcare providers to follow the priorities in order of priority and kind of have a backup list of people who are high risk in case they need to rapidly call people to come over to be vaccinated. But I have also heard reports that, sometimes if you're getting close to expiration of that vaccine, it expires within 6 hours when you start using that vial. In order to avoid wastage, they are going to grab somebody close to get that vaccine into an arm.
That's a good thing. I mean, that's a good thing. None of us want to see that vaccine wasted. And so I don't blame anybody for showing that initiative, nor the healthcare provider for making sure it doesn't get wasted. I hope you understand that was, part of what I was getting at. I want to ask you this. North Dakota led the nation in people with COVID for quite some time. Now we're doing quite well at getting the allotted vaccine into arms, getting people vaccinated. So do we have a closer time lapse for herd immunity? Do we have, because of the fact that this many people had it and the chance of getting it again is not as great, and these people have been vaccinated, so do we get a chance to reach herd immunity sooner rather than later?
I think it's definitely possible. If you have a number of people who have had COVID and have antibodies to COVID, they would be protected. And then on top of that, if we're getting people vaccinated, there is a chance that we could get closer to that herd immunity quicker. I think there's some questions now with variant viruses and how long you do have immunity from natural infection. And so I think some of those still have to be answered, but I do think North Dakota could be to herd immunity faster because of how rapidly we're vaccinating and then because of the number of COVID cases we had.
So, when you take a look at this, because of that accelerated rate, does that mean we're going to get down to my grandkids quicker?
Well, children are not yet able to get COVID-19 vaccine, but I do think by this summer, the FDA may authorize one or more of the vaccines down to the age of 12. And so you could this summer start seeing kids being able to be vaccinated. That is a possibility, yes.
So, Molly, I want to go backwards a little bit to a question I had about individuals that had COVID. Are you seeing at the health department many cases where individuals who have had COVID, which, by the way, I'm one of, individuals like me contracting it again?
We have had cases of reinfection. I don't know off the top of my head how many. I would need to look that information up, but we have had individuals who have met the case definition for COVID and have had tested positive beyond 90 days after when they originally had COVID. And so, yes, we have seen that.
But not a great number.
Not a great number,
Yeah.
no.
That's my understanding as well. The president sent some goals out. Molly, if you have, well, take a view of this and tell me what you think of it. This is what Joe Biden said last night.
We're also able to move up the delivery dates with an additional 200 million vaccines to the end of July, faster than we expected. And in further good news, both companies agreed, and we're now contractually obligated to expedite delivery of 100 million doses that were promised by the end of June to deliver them by the end of May. That's a month faster. That means lives will be saved. That means we're now on track to have enough supply for 300 million Americans by the end of July. We're also able to move up the delivery dates with the...
Molly, I'm a politician. I was in my past, and I still kind of am now as a talk show host and TV show host. But I got to ask you this: is that under-promising so that you can over-deliver? Is that goal that he set doable?
I think it's definitely doable. I think as we're seeing more vaccines and we're continuing to move down the priority groups, I really feel like we're gonna have more than enough resources to vaccinate those who want to receive COVID-19 vaccine by this spring sometime.
Okay. Well, that's good to hear. Molly, if people want to sign up, find more information, where do they go?
Go to the North Dakota Department of Health website and click on COVID, and you will find all the information you need about COVID or vaccination.
Thank you. Thank you for coming on, and thank you for helping to get information out. I'm sure we'll call again. Thanks for coming down the road with us.
Thanks.
When we come back, Dr. Richard Den is going to join us. He understands the Keystone XL pipeline. We're going to talk about what it is, we're going to talk about what it delivers, and talk about what's happening when it comes to it as we head down the road.
Capital City Restaurant Supply is your one-stop shop for quality restaurant products for the large to small kitchens. Commercial-grade restaurant and bar supplies, limb game processing equipment, refrigeration, dinnerware, and smallware. We sell everything including the kitchen sink from trusted manufacturers for the chef and all of us. Open to the public since 1971, we are veteran-owned and North Dakota proud. Let us take care of your restaurant and home kitchen needs today by visiting us at 1414 Interstate Loop in Bismarck or on the web at capitalcityrestaurantsupply.com.
Did you know the Foundation for Rural Service awards scholarships for rural students? The scholarships range from $2,500 to $7,000. Go to www.frs.org for information and applications.
Hi, I'm Dennis Haugen, along with my sons Andy and Mike, and we're showing our support for wind energy in North Dakota.
Wind energy has provided farmers like us with a steady stream of income that's not tied to the weather like crops and cattle are.
Another bonus is that wind farm owners are required to maintain the roads leading up to the turbines. Because of that, oftentimes these roads are the best in the county. Wind energy is good for landowners, it's good for the land, it's good for our economy, and it's good for North Dakota.
There's nothing more important than family. And at Prairie Rose Family Dentists, we get it. That's why we have more locations, more dentists, specialists, extended hours, pediatric clinics, and even emergency appointments, so you can always be seen. Book your appointment today at prairierosedentist.com. Prairie Rose Family Dentists. We are family.
40 years ago, Aero Service Team started with one truck and lots of hard work.
Times may have changed, but the hard work that we put in to get your lives back in order after fire, water, and disaster hasn't.
Over the years, we've seen so many families lose their belongings due to water and fire damage. Restoring homes back to the original state has made every hour of hard work well worth it.
Thank you for trusting our family with yours.
When disaster strikes, you only have to make one call. Aero Service Team does it all.
Pub 21, your one stop for fun, drinks, and food. Our spacious facility provides COVID-safe fun for you and all your friends. With nightly bingo and specials, you can be sure there's something to do for everyone. If you're staying in for the night, we've got you covered just across the way with Pub 21 Liquor. We have a wide variety of options, from wine to whiskey and everything in between. Stop in today at 1014 South 12th Street in Bismarck to see what all the buzz is about. You won't be disappointed.
Good to have you still coming down the road with us. You know, I'm a pipeline guy. I'm an infrastructure guy. You might say, well, okay, Heitkamp, you're a Democrat, and it's your president that caused this whole conversation about the Keystone XL pipeline. But what I do know is this, that my sister Heidi, when she was in the United States Senate, that Heidi pushed for and got the ability for small amounts, I realize, North Dakota sweet crude to get into the Keystone XL pipeline because, quite frankly, it was Canadian oil that we're shipping here. And so who better to get on than Dr. Richard Den. Now, Dr. Richard Den is the TCU Energy Institute Director. So good to have you coming down the road with us, Dr. Den.
Good afternoon. Good to be here.
I think a lot of people, when they hear Keystone, it's become such a political football, and they don't know what Keystone does. Can you explain to them, you know, the logistics and what that pipeline is designed for?
Okay. I guess right up front, there is an existing Keystone Pipeline that is taking Canadian crude, Alberta, down into the Gulf Coast. What the XL pipeline is, an additional, some of it's running a different route. So rather than going, the main Keystone goes to the eastern side of North Dakota, South Dakota, and then down through Nebraska. The XL would kind of cut that right angle off, take it through South Dakota and Nebraska and Montana. The main point of the Keystone pipelines is the Alberta oil is heavy crude, which is very different from your North Dakota Bakken crude. And to bring it down to the Gulf Coast, most of the refineries in the Gulf Coast were designed to handle Venezuelan and Mexican heavy crude, which is good for making diesel and various other products like asphalt, stuff like that. And they were built that way because they can make more money, because generally heavy crude is cheaper than the light crude that's produced out of North Dakota. And so they can make more money by breaking it down into these different products. And so as Venezuela fell apart, and now Pemex down in Mexico, their production is starting to fall off, that opened the doors for this Canadian heavy crude to come down into the Gulf Coast, even though they're having to bring it, 1,200 miles plus just to get it down into the main pipelines going through Kansas and Oklahoma down into Texas. So it's a long pipeline delivery system, but once we lost access to Venezuela crude, we really needed this Canadian stuff to bring that down. So that's in a nutshell what it is.
Okay. The original pipeline you're talking about, I think many people forget about. We called it, if we're talking about the same thing, we called it the Dome Pipeline in the beginning. And of course, it's since changed ownership and changed names, but it came within 2 miles of my house in Little Matador, North Dakota. We'd always see a plane flying over to inspect it, to make sure that it's in good shape. Why is this such a political football? Describe to people why it seems that both sides of the aisle are using this to their base to literally define who they are.
Well, I'll start with, and I guess to open it up, so I'm a moderate, so I kind of sit between and you scratch your head on either side. The environmental left, and we saw this with the Dakota Access Pipeline, and so we're seeing it here. They're pretty much, their goal is or their thinking is that if they shut down all internal production of oil and gas, that will force the United States into a greener, more renewable energy system. On the other side, say you definitely hear this out of Texas, John Cornyn and Ted Cruz and Greg Abbott are going to anything that is going to restrict production and access of oil and gas, and they will then automatically be against that. So there's kind of this push and pull, and there doesn't seem, once again, with politics, the middle ground seems to be the unheard majority.
Well, and can I add this, Dr. Dan, that the North Dakota Sweet Crude that you talked about, when the Bakken play really kicked in, and a lot of people that are viewing you right now come from that area, that the people that developed it, Continental, for example, Harold Hamm, they didn't want the Keystone XL pipeline. I remember him fighting the Keystone XL pipeline. And, to me, that was all about the Keystone XL being a competitor of that Bakken crude. And is that still the case today?
No. And, well, I don't think it ever really was, to be honest. The Dakota crude, the Bakken, it's a very different variety. And so, yes, you can still make gasoline out of both varieties. So you can say that, but the point of the Dakota Access was to get it to the East Coast refineries, which were built to handle Saudi Middle Eastern crude, once again, the light stuff. And so there's some competition, but not nearly the amount that you would want to shut down this heavier stuff, because there's so many components of it, diesel being the main one. It's very difficult to make diesel out of, say, Bakken crude, or like here in Texas, it's the West Texas coming out of the Permian Basin, and then also the Eagle Ford crude from South Texas. That's very light, and it isn't. It doesn't make sense for refineries to make that into diesel. It's much easier to do it, much more cost effective to do it out of this heavier crude. And then you've got other stuff like asphalt. You just can't get it out of the Bakken, North Dakota stuff. So I can understand to some extent what Harold Hamm would have been talking about. Really, I think in the long run, it's not a true competitor to the Bakken stuff. And I was at Marathon up until the end of 2015, and we were big in the Bakken, much bigger on the Eagle Ford thing. But it's basically the same type of crude.
Yeah, and I remember that being a huge part of the conversation as well. Is there an estimate on how many jobs, if you pull the permit, if you don't see this pipeline being built, is there an estimate on how many? Sure, they might be short term, meaning they're not permanent jobs, but how many jobs that are lost?
If you go to TC Energy which is the old TransCanada Energy, they'll put out numbers. I think when they talk about direct and indirect jobs, they throw out a number as big as 60,000 jobs. Of course, that includes caterers and other local things. So I think when you kind of parse that down, you're looking at maybe somewhere between 15,000 and 20,000 jobs. But most of those are going to be short term, directly linked to laying of the pipeline. And then when those jobs are over, then you're looking at maybe, I don't really know, maybe 1,000 jobs to keep it running.
So one more quick question. If somebody came up to you and said, look, they had a permit for 4 years, they had an opportunity to build this, why didn't they get it done? What would your answer to that be?
Unfortunately, it is just pure politics. It's, in my mind, your only other option to move this crude is by rail, and I think that's a flat-out mistake. So, unfortunately, it is, it's a political decision, and it's basically trying to force the U.S. to use energy outside of the oil and gas system.
Interesting. Dr. Dent, thank you. I think people know a lot more about the XL pipeline now than what they did before. Appreciate you coming on.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
as you know, this is very controversial on a national scale. I think he did a great job of explaining both sides' position. For me, I'm an infrastructure guy, and I'm a moderate like he is. I come from the left side of the aisle. I get that. But for me personally, when you're building infrastructure, I think it's a good thing. It's something you can access long term. When we come back, the power grid. We're going to visit with Marshall Albright. When we come back right here as we go down the road.
Jeez, what a mess. Look at that. There's roof stuff everywhere. It's so embarrassing. Ruins the neighborhood. Come on, humans. Let's get this fixed.
Don't let your roof go to the dogs. Call America's Best Contractors for your free estimate.
Need a new woof?
After checking with the rest, go with the best. America's Best Contractors. 258-2412. Online at americasbestcontractorsincorporated.com.
Beck Communications is hiring. Beck Communications is seeking qualified candidates for plant technicians in our Wheatland, North Dakota location. Beck Communications is an equal opportunity employer. To view the job details, visit www.beck.coop. To apply, email your cover letter and resume to careers@bechtel.coop. Beck Communications, making connections that matter.
In southwestern and south central North Dakota, on any given day at any given moment, a Dakota Community Bank and Trust customer is logging in or signing on to do their online or mobile banking. We believe that community banking can blend both the past with down-home customer service in-house and the future with modern banking conveniences and technology for our customers anywhere, like here or here, all while honoring our long-standing tradition of community-first oriented banking here at Dakota Community Bank and Trust.
If you're a Beck Fiber customer or the dependent of a Beck Fiber customer, you might qualify for scholarships. Beck awards scholarships to seniors headed to college or to students attending University of Mary. Go to www.beck.coop for eligibility guidelines and applications.
The experienced professionals at Superior Glass provide residential and commercial glass installation and repair services in central and western North Dakota. Superior Glass is your source for stained glass projects, mirrors, windows, touchless, and automated entry solutions. Stop by and see us at 3323 East Broadway in Bismarck or call us at 701-258-5600. Superior Glass, where you get superior service for less. Bye for now.
Did you know the Foundation for Rural Service awards scholarships for rural students? The scholarships range from $2,500 to $7,000. Go to www.frs.org for information and applications.
Thanks for still being in the rig. You know, Texas. Everybody's talking about Texas and the power grid and what's happening there. It's playing out nationally. Okay, we've seen all the tragedy that can come in the middle of a winter storm when people don't have power. I think at times we here in the upper Midwest don't realize how good we have it. What a great grid has been built for us. Marshall Albright. I have known Marshall for a long time. He is the CEO of Cass County Electric, one of the top rural electrics in the nation. I would argue he joins us now. Marshall, good to have you coming down the road with us.
Thanks for having me, Joel.
You know, easy times, right? Nobody's using any power right now.
Days like today, the power is flowing nice.
I used to, as an old utility manager, I was telling you at Rural Water before you came on that I used to go in people's houses and like leave the sink on, something so water kept moving so we could, you know, but you don't have that problem this month.
No, it's kind of self-induced. I guess when the weather gets cold, people just use it to keep warm, and that's a good thing.
I think at times people don't understand how power moves. And so I try to compare it to that tree. You know, the roots. Describe to people how the power moves, how it gets to you and how you deal with it.
Well, first it has to be generated somewhere. In our case, we buy our power through Dakota Power Cooperative out of Grand Forks, and they actually have coal plants in central North Dakota, and they produce power there and then transmit it to our substations around our service territory.
Okay. So, you know, when you kind of look at this whole thing, you know, you're generated, you buy, then you distribute. And what goes into that?
Well, Cass County Electric doesn't generate our own power, so we buy 100% of our power from Dakota Power Cooperative. We buy energy, we buy kilowatt hours, and then we sell those to our membership.
So, how do you do it? I mean, people think of poles, they think of underground, they think of all of that, but it's all got to work.
Well, it does, and it's a very complex system. If you look at not only our system, but the entire electric grid, it's like a big machine, and it's running 24/7, 365, and you need it at a certain level. You need to slightly generate more than what's being used. And if you fall short of generation compared to the usage, you can run into problems. In fact, that's what's been happening in Texas and through the SPP, Southwest Power Pool. Their generation resources weren't meeting the demand requirement. Therefore, they had to shed some load to make sure they didn't undersupply their loads, because that would cause a big problem. That could cause major blackouts.
So going back to my days in water, there was always unaccounted for water.
Yep.
Is it the same in electricity?
Well, it's easier to store water. You can store water in a tank. You cannot really store electricity feasibly today. I guess really the only storage of energy is probably behind a dam. You know, that's one good example of storing energy behind a dam, like Garrison Diversion. There's a lot of energy in that water waiting to turn the turbine, but typical electricity like coal, natural gas, or even wind, you can't store it today feasibly.
So, I mean, you've been in this for a long time.
Yep.
You know, I'm older than you, I get that. But when I grew up, there was one TV in the house. There was one TV drawing power.
Yep.
You go in my house now, there's not one TV. I'm not going to tell you how many TVs, or you'll look at me saying, what the heck you got that many for? But the point I'm trying to make is this. I use power everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, absolutely everywhere. I mean, Mom and Dad would have said, shut that off. You know, that doesn't seem to be as big of a concern anymore. Do we just take it for granted?
I think we absolutely take it for granted. And I think we've kind of caused this problem ourselves, because we really supply reliable power. I mean, it's rare today that we have an outage. So when it does occur, people really kind of freak out. It's like, what is going on? Why are we having an outage? And, you know, if we get to the point where we're seeing in Texas, you know, this week where they're out of power like a lot, people are not used to that, and they just can't deal with it. And it's something that we don't want to see happen. You know, we do whatever we can to make sure our reliability is as high as it can be. In fact, last year we were #1 in the nation for reliability for cooperatives our size.
Really?
Yeah.
Hang on your hat on that one.
Yeah, no kidding.
You're going to be telling your grandkids that someday.
Yeah.
I mean, I would be. So, you know, when you look at, you say reliability, I would also say affordability.
Absolutely.
I mean, you know, and I'm not trying to do an ad for you here, but when I look at the bills I pay each month, that's a pretty reasonable bill for what I get.
I agree. And I guess I look at even my bill in my house, and I don't get any discounts for working where I do, but my bill's about $100. It's one of my cheapest bills that I have. And what
don't you put up any Christmas lights?
Not too many. I'm pretty conservative that way.
Okay.
But we take it for granted, you know, and the things that it does for us. You know, you get warm water in the morning to take a shower, you make your coffee, you charge your phone, you get internet service powered by electricity, and all the other advantages of having electricity for about $100 a month, and I think that's a great value.
So in terms of heating your home, let me give you an example during this cold snap. I've got a heat pump.
Yep.
Then, you know, #2 reserve is a plenum heater.
Yep.
Then after that, I got a propane furnace. How common is what I just described?
That's a very typical system for a new home in the rural area, you know, where there's not access to natural gas. That is the type of system that we recommend folks put in a rural area. So they have, you know, a few options, and they have a full backup to get the lowest possible rate on off-peak for their house.
Yeah, and that was recommended to me by my rural cooperative, by Dakota Valley Electric. And, you know, the only thing that every now and then happens, Marshall, is when I kick in the other one, I smell it burning the dust.
Yeah.
you know,
And
the very first couple minutes is
that
like,
will
okay,
happen.
that hasn't run for a while.
That's your warning sign that it's working the way it's supposed to.
Exactly, exactly. Let's talk about Texas and what happened in Texas. They wanted to live on an island, and they do live on an island when it comes to power, and it's biting them right in the keister.
You know what, Texas is an interesting situation. Like you said, they're an island in themselves when it comes to their transmission and generation. So they don't trade back and forth with the rest of the country. And, you know, based on their power supply and their way it's set up today, it's worked pretty good for them. But we've had a couple incidences over the past 10 years, one in 2011, where they actually had a blackout at that point in time too, with some cold weather. But it really hit this time. And I think, I don't know if you call it the perfect storm or not, but they had cold weather, they had icing, and a winter storm, and the cold weather lasted longer than normal. And when you look at their power supply in Texas, they're not really what I'd call weather hardened, weatherized maybe, to deal with long-term cold weather, meaning that all of their power plants, be it natural gas, nuclear, coal, or even wind, don't really have the protection probably that we would have up here for our power supply. And a great example of that would be, I'll say a gas plant. So their gas plant is cooled by water. They don't have the proper anti-freeze protection on their cooling water system. And if you can't cool the water, you can't run the power plant. So that's one issue on all of the power sources. The other one was power supply. So in Texas, because it's so cold and because so many homes were demanding heat from natural gas, that was really stressing their natural gas system. So natural gas was being used for home heating and also for power supply. And some of the gas was even froze up at the wellhead because of cold temperatures. So there's lots of factors that came to place. So the supply of natural gas went way down, and therefore they couldn't run everything, including power plants.
And water was in the natural gas pipeline?
I don't know about that, but
there's rumors that was freezing up.
That could be. Whatever, there is moisture in natural gas, and maybe that's what it was. Yes, I'm not sure.
What about because wind is really taking a whooping in the public perception. That it's all wind, it's all renewable energy, such as wind towers. Is that fair? Is it true? And question number one. And question number two is, you say winterized. Are the wind towers in Texas the same as the wind tower I might see on the edge of Valley City, for example?
Okay. So when you look at the situation in Texas, you know, from the effect on wind specifically, you know, you look at icing. That was probably the number one reason that the wind didn't operate, is because of ice stuff. And we have that here too. There's no difference there. We have icing here as well. That was one of the major causes. And when the reports first came out, most of the fingers are pointing to wind and natural gas. Now that we learn more of what's actually happened, it affected all sources. The thing about Texas is that over 40% of their power comes from natural gas, and over 25% comes from wind. So if you take those two major sources and reduce it, that's going to have a huge impact on the grid, and it did. Now, as far as the actual winterization part of it for wind especially, I'm not sure what impact it has to put like cold weather heaters like we have up here inside the gearboxes of our wind turbines. We run ours down, at least the original ones are at -22. Then they actually shut off, you know, so they don't operate. And we had that condition here even last week with our turbines where they weren't operating because it was too cold.
Right.
In Texas, I'm not sure what that value is. Meaning when they put a cold weather heater in there, does that bring it from -10 down to
not -22.
That I don't know.
Fair to say.
But there's something there that they probably don't run as low as ours could probably run.
Okay, I get it. When you look at where they're going in terms of just being an island on themselves, there's no way. For example, if South Dakota had a problem, we could get more power to South Dakota. Fair?
Correct.
Okay, there's no way to get power from outside into Texas?
Limited. They are getting some power from MISO, which is the Mid-Continent Independent System Operator, which is who we get our power from, and SPP a little bit. But their resources are stretched as well, so they can't just dump a bunch of excess power because they don't have a bunch of excess power to dump.
I thought I
They're
read something
sending
today
some.
where they're getting some from Mexico.
They're getting
or they
some
had
there
been in
too.
the past.
Yeah, they can too. If
Okay.
as long as the transmission can handle it and it's up, they're getting some assistance, but not that much. They're basically relying mostly on their own production.
I spoke to a gentleman on my radio show today who can't get out of Texas. He can't get a flight out.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that bad. And believe me, he and his wife wanted to get out of Texas right now.
There were this morning. I heard a report. They interviewed the CEO of ERCOT this morning, and they had 46,000 megawatts yet out of power.
Wow,
that's a huge amount of power. Yeah. So in the MISO footprint today, we were at about 85,000 megawatts in the entire MISO footprint, which runs from Manitoba all the way down to Texas. One thing I will mention too, it's been cold, obviously, from Manitoba to Texas. And this morning, the power supply makeup to make sure we have power both in SPP and MISO, which is probably over 120,000 megawatt hours, 80% of that was coming from coal and natural gas.
Really?
And coal was over 50% of that load. So I guess the concern we have is that there's a push in the country to go away from coal and even natural gas maybe someday, and I'm concerned about that. How are we going to make up the difference of over 50% of the load that comes from coal?
We won't.
I don't
not yet. We're going to.
No.
Marshall, thank you. Thanks for coming on. Marshall Albright, ladies and gentlemen, you're not going to worry. If you're on Cass County Electric tomorrow, or if you're on one of these rural electrics tomorrow, you know what's going to happen? The light's going to flick on in the morning, not in Texas. When we come back, a few thoughts for you as we head down the road.
Howdy folks, it's the Caroline Cafe. I reckon it's time you're due for a hearty meal. So saddle up for the day with one of our Hey Bussin' breakfast homemade soups. Fill your grill at a salad bar, sink your teeth into our famous Caroline burger and barbecue ribs. Top it off with spur rattling pie with a comb roll that's sure to put a smile on even the toughest outlaws. Shake the dirt off the boots each night and warm up with the game. Tell them about it, Stacy.
I can't wait to see you at the county line.
Since opening in Hebron in 1940, Dakota Community Bank and Trust has been your hometown bank. Our mission has been to provide modern banking convenience with old-fashioned hometown service. We've grown with the communities we serve. Through year-round events, countless sponsorships, and nearly 7,000 hours of volunteering each year. Learn more about our 80-year history at dakotacommunitybank.com.
Capital City Restaurant Supply is your one-stop shop for quality restaurant products for the large to small kitchens. Commercial-grade restaurant and bar supplies, limb game processing equipment, refrigeration, dinnerware, and smallware. We sell everything including the kitchen sink for trusted manufacturers for the chef and all of us. Open to the public since 1971, we are veteran-owned and North Dakota proud. Let us take care of your restaurant and home kitchen needs today by visiting us at 1414 Interstate Loop in Bismarck or on the web at capitalcityrestaurantsupply.com.
Jeez, what a mess. Look at that. There's roof stuff everywhere. It's so embarrassing. Ruins the neighborhood. Come on, humans. Let's get this fixed.
Don't let your roof go to the dogs. Call America's Best Contractors for your free estimate.
Need a new woof?
After checking with the rest, go with the best. America's Best Contractors. 258-2412. Online at americasbestcontractorsincorporated.com.
Did you know the Foundation for Rural Service awards scholarships for rural students? The scholarships range from $2,500 to $7,000. Go to www.frs.org for information and applications. If you're a Beck Fiber customer or the dependent of a Beck Fiber customer, you might qualify for scholarships. Beck awards scholarships to seniors headed to college or to students attending University of Mary. Go to www.beck.coop for eligibility guidelines and applications.
I really appreciate guys like Marshall Albright with Cass County Electric for coming on and kind of explaining what we're going through. Right now, you're watching me through Broadband Association of North Dakota. You're watching me through Beck TV. That's infrastructure. That's a cooperative that took a risk, right? And is delivering a product that you may enjoy, you may not enjoy, but the product's there. And the cooperative made that decision. When you look at what Marshall's doing on the power side, that's a decision that people long before us made, and we made based upon the need. You know, when I was growing up, if you left a light on, if you left any light on in the house, it was going to be trouble. I mean, it was going to be. Dad or mom were going to make sure you knew about it, and if you kept doing it, they were going to make sure you knew about it in a much stronger way. We take that for, just for granted right now. We do. We just assume it's going to be on when we need it on. We just assume it's going to be affordable. And this was a wake-up call, what happened in Texas. You heard what Marshall said, if you were on with us a little bit earlier in the show. But what he said was this was a wake-up call, that they didn't wish for it, but in a way they kind of did. And why? Why is because of fossil fuels. Why is because of what we can grab from this earth. This earth is, we can grab and we can put to work on our power grid. Coal, natural gas, oil, those type of things. I've never, ever been against any of those things on the power grid, and I never will be. Because quite frankly, when it comes to the power grid, and Texas has taught the nation this, it needs to be an all of the above mentality. Now, the problem for Texas is this. In pure Texas fashion, they don't need anybody, right? They don't need anybody. They would laugh at us as a nation. We have our own power grid, and it's not just going to be done through private industry. It's not going to be done, whether it be through, local cooperatives. We're going to do this through private industry. Well, look at, they singled themselves out. Now there's a problem. There's a big problem. And none of us can get power to them to help them out at times like this. And here's the other part you watch for, because it's going to happen. Once the weather gets better, it still isn't going to mean the light switch goes on. It's not. Because the problems that this has caused are problems that are yet to be discovered. When you start freezing up pipelines, ladies and gentlemen, there's going to be a problem. When you start freezing up the wind towers and the things that make it run, there's going to be a problem. When you start freezing up homes, and now you're going to kick it back on, tell you what, there's going to be a problem. There's some pipes that are going to be frozen in this whole deal. People were sleeping in cars. They were sleeping in cars. In fact, if they found out that there was gas available at the local gas station, they waited in line like it was the end of the 70s. I mean, that's exactly what happened. And so there's a problem. There's a real problem. Also want to talk about one other thing today. Point of personal liberty, whatever. I want to talk about Rush Limbaugh. Right now, you're all sitting there going, okay, there goes that Democrat Heitkamp going to talk about how Rush Limbaugh died today, and he's going to say something rude. Or, you know what, I'm not. I'm not. Rush Limbaugh was a pioneer in my line of work. He was. Didn't like him. He probably wouldn't have liked me. Didn't like what he said on air. He wouldn't have liked what I said on air. But I'll tell you what, there's a reason there is talk radio. There is. There's a reason that there is a political talk medium out there, and that makes you think about it. You don't have to tune into it. You didn't have to tune into Rush, and you didn't have to tune into me. That's the beauty of the system, right? If you didn't want to talk politics, if you didn't want to talk about policy, if you didn't want to talk about things that are going on at the North Dakota State Capitol or in D.C., you didn't have to. But if you did, one of the things, the pioneers that brought that all to the airways was Rush Limbaugh. It was. He created a lot of jobs for people like my predecessor, Ed Schultz, who kind of took the contrary for a while. He was a pretty strict Republican in the beginning, but he took that Democratic position in the end of his career. And as far as, Ed might disagree with me. Ed, unfortunately, is gone. For those of you that don't know, most of you do. But if Ed was on with me right now, he might disagree. He might say, I was going to do that, and I was doing that, you know what? It was Rush Limbaugh that blazed that trail. It was. It was Rush Limbaugh that pointed out to the world that there's a place for that and that you can get ratings and you can get revenue. In other words, advertisers wanted to be on those radio shows. And so I don't take it for granted. I don't. I don't take it for granted one bit. And so with Rush's passing, there's going to be a void there. And with any time there's a void in any industry, somebody's going to step up. There's going to be another Rush Limbaugh for the conservatives to hang their hat on. A lot of people already think they are, right? They're not yet. They're not. If you mention talk radio or if you mention conservative talk radio, the first words out of anybody's mouth are going to be Rush Limbaugh. I don't know who's going to be that next Rush. I don't have any idea on the conservative side. I just know this. I've proved that you can have progressive talk radio in a red state and it works. And you can have progressive TV right here on Beck and it can work. People like yourself want to watch, even though you may disagree, you want to be part of that conversation. When we come back, we're going to close out this day's show, and we're going to get a chance to give you just a couple final thoughts as we head down the road.
There's nothing more important than family. And at Prairie Rose Family Dentists, we get it. That's why we have more locations, more dentists, specialists, extended hours, pediatric clinics, and even emergency appointments, so you can always be seen. Book your appointment today at prairierosedentist.com. Prairie Rose Family Dentists. We are family.
Deciding how to promote your business can be hard. Visit the professionals at Dakota Promotions and Printing and let them help you through your struggle. Dakota Promotions provides promotional items and apparel from corporate gifts to team shirts and everything in between. With quick turnaround times and friendly service, they are your best choice. And best yet, you're shopping local. Visit them online at dakotapromo.com or stop in their showroom at 320 West Main in Mandan. Dakota Promotions, delivering promotions just for you.
Hi, I'm Dennis Haugen, along with my sons Andy and Mike, and we're showing our support for wind energy in North Dakota.
Wind energy has provided farmers like us with a steady stream of income that's not tied to the weather like crops and cattle are.
Another bonus is that wind farm owners are required to maintain the roads leading up to the turbines. Because of that, oftentimes these roads are the best in the county. Wind energy is good for landowners, it's good for the land, it's good for our economy, and it's good for North Dakota.
40 years ago, Aero Service Team started with one truck and lots of hard work.
Times may have changed, but the hard work that we put in to get your lives back in order after fire, water, and disaster hasn't.
Over the years, we've seen so many families lose their belongings due to water and fire damage. Restoring homes back to the original state has made every hour of hard work well worth it.
Thank you for trusting our family with yours.
When disaster strikes, you only have to make one call. Aero Service Team does it all.
The experienced professionals at Superior Glass provide residential and commercial glass installation and repair services in central and western North Dakota. Superior Glass is your source for stained glass projects, mirrors, windows, touchless, and automated entry solutions. Stop by and see us at 3323 East Broadway in Bismarck or call us at 701-258-5600. Superior Glass, where you get superior service for less. Bye for now.
Now is the best time to plan for your 2021 farm equipment needs. North Dakota-based Summers Manufacturing is currently offering early order savings. Take advantage of big savings on North America's broadest tillage line, including the Super Kohler Samurai and the innovative VRT Renegade, as well as the best built, best backed land rollers in the industry. Talk to your Summers dealer today or go to summersmfg.com to learn more about early order savings available on all Summers equipment.
It's always good having you come down the road with us. It's a different era, right? It's a different day, and quite frankly, we have a different president with a different style. I have had the privilege of getting to know Joe Biden through the years, meeting him, talking to him, and just getting a sense of who the man is. Last night, he held a town hall meeting in Wisconsin, and I just want you to take a little look at this and then kind of show you what I'm getting at.
And it's especially scary for children who may or may not understand. My children, Layla, 8 here, and my son Mateo, 7 at home, often ask if they will catch COVID, and if they do, will they die? They are watching as others get the vaccine, and they would like to know, when will kids be able to get the vaccine?
Well, first of all, honey, what's your first name?
Layla.
Layla, beautiful name. First of all, kids don't get the vaccine, get COVID very often. It's unusual for that to happen. They don't, and the evidence so far is children aren't the people most likely to get COVID, number one. Number two, we haven't even done tests yet on children as to whether or not the certain vaccines would work or not work, or what is needed. So you're the safest group of people in the whole world, number one. Number two, you're not likely to be able to be exposed to something and spread it to mommy or daddy. And it's not likely mommy and daddy are able to spread it to you either. So I wouldn't worry about it, baby, I promise you. But I know it's kind of worrisome. Are you in first grade, second grade?
Second.
Oh, you're getting old. Second grade. Well, have you been in school, honey?
No.
No. See, that's kind of a scary thing too. You don't get to go to school, you don't get to see your friends, and so what a lot of kids, and big people too, older people, their whole lives have sort of changed like when it used to be. You used to be able to just go outside and play with your friends and get in the school bus and go to school, and everything was normal. And now when things change, people get really worried and scared. But don't be scared, honey. Don't be scared. You're going to be fine. And we're going to make sure mommy's fine too.
That's the Joe Biden I know. That's the Joe Biden I've had the privilege to speak to. And I actually have voted for, and I'm proud to have voted for. That's a different era of a president. Now, I know many of you didn't vote for Joe Biden. That's your call. That's your choice. But I want a president who did exactly what he just did. It's good riding with you, folks.